Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MetrObelisk Radio. Today we are finally going to be looking at Survivor Africa. Now I know that I skipped this and went straight for Marquesas after Winners at War was done, but in my, I know I'm just sounding like I'm making up excuses. I just wanted to let this simmer because I wanted to ponder why this season is still considered a top 5 season despite being the 3rd season of Survivor. What makes this season so memorable? Was it a combination of things, or was it just one item in particular? That's what we will explore today when we take a look back at Survivor Africa. Now, before we get going, if you enjoy the content that I produce, subscribe to the YouTube channel and BitChute channel. It's a small click for you, but for a small channel like mine, it helps out a lot. Like, comment, and share the video if you want to. Follow me on the blog and the social medias. All of the links to those are down below. So with that out of the way, let's just tear right into Survivor Africa now. Now, like with all Survivor seasons, I do start off by taking a look at the twists, and this was actually the first season to have a major twist, and there was only one twist the entire season. The big twist for Survivor Africa was the tribe swap. Ooh, so revolutionary. Well, at the time it was revolutionary. Nowadays it's just expected. And like I said, this was the first season to feature this twist, and it would be used throughout the series as time went on. So really, that was it for the twist portion. There was nothing more than that. But remember when this show came out, this was, I think, aired in October of 2001, and there had only been 2 seasons prior to it. So, you got to do something to help your season stand apart from the rest of the crowd. Now we've reached the cast assessment portion of our, episode into Survivor Africa, and we're going to start off by looking at the Samburu Tribe. First boot of the tribe was Carl, and there was, nothing too special with him. Same with Linda. I don't remember too much about her either, and I'll expand on why this is in the gameplay portion. We'll get to it eventually. And then we got Frank, and with Frank, he just annoyed me. They basically just tried to get another Rudy Bosch, and it didn't work simply because, Rudy was 72, and here's Frank in his early 40s, so, him being that politically incorrect, he's not at the age where he can, get away with it, where everybody can just laugh at it and go, oh, okay, that's just, crotchety old man, get off my fucking lawn type. And this is someone that I believe, really benefited from the swap. And then, the next one up is T-Bird. She was the other person who really benefited from the swap happening. Now, I don't remember too much about T-Bird other than that. And that's because the Samburu Tribe really wasn't shown as much as the other tribe was. And again, we'll get into that, a little bit later. But next up, we've got Brandon. And he's the other one that really annoyed me this season. And he's only memorable because he was the gay guy in Africa. Because every Survivor season prior to this, that was Borneo and Australian Outback had a gay guy. So you need to have a gay guy this season. So in Borneo, you had Richard Hatch, who went on to win the game. Okay, fine. You had Varner, who was gay, could theoretically win the game, but wasn't in your face about it. Brandon was basically just parade gay, and it was the type where it gets very old very fast. It gets to the point where it's like, yeah, I get it, move on. And speaking of moving on, let's move on to the next person. That would be Kim Powers, and that was, and she's basically the hot chick from Survivor Africa. And really, this wasn't uncommon, back then, back in the first 10 years. Think of others like Amber from Australia, Aaron from Thailand, Jenna Maraska from the Amazon, Dara from the Pearl Islands, and Parvati from the Cook Islands. Have the hot chick for the season. That way, you have some eye candy. Now, granted, some of those women, were decent players. Others, not so much. But, you got to give the men a reason to watch, and why not have the hot chick out there? Then we have Silas, and his claim to fame is he was the first person to ever get screwed by the swap. And again, we will get to it in the gameplay portion because it's tied to that. And then finally we have Lindsay, and she was the other person to get screwed by the swap this season, and I will expand on that later. Now let's get to the tribe that was shown the most this season, and that was the Boron Tribe. And the first person we're going to talk about is the first boot of the season. That was Diane. She dehydrated and passed out the first immunity challenge, gets voted out. Not a whole lot of strategy to that. Then we have Jessie, the cop who was the second boot of the season. She gets too sick, her body can't handle the elements, she gets voted out. Again, not a whole lot of, game strategy that you see nowadays. It's like you have the first person who just dehydrated and passed out, and the other person who was just too sick. Okay, so just get them both out. Done. Then next up we have Clarence, and I don't remember too much about Clarence, other than he was the guy who ate all of the cherries on day one, and that, if you ask most Survivor fans, that's all that they remember Clarence for. And then we have Kelly, the victim of Lex's infamous snake hunt. And that's really where she's remembered for, other than the bullshit of, her final jury speech with, pick a number between 1 and 1,000. Because back then, that's what they did to decide who the winner was. And I do remember it got really fucking stupid at the end. So anyone who claims to tell you that the first 10 seasons, the first 10 years were better, go back and watch those final tribals. A lot of it was either questions that were very, very self-centered, or it was pick a number between 1 and 10. Pick a number between 1 and 1,000. That's how we're going to decide. Isn't that right? Ha 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 ha. Anyway, I'm tangenting here. So next up on our list is Kim Johnson. She was the other Kim on this season, and that's all there really is to her, other than she was the other Kim on the season. And then we get to Lex Vandenberg, the guy with all the tattoos. At least everybody my age who watched Survivor back then, remembered him as, hey, that's the guy with all the tattoos. Leader of a 3-person alliance with Ethan, Big Tom, and himself. The guy who initiated the snake hunt against Kelly. He won the most immunities that season with three immunities and 2 rewards, whatnot. Then we get to Big Tom, and like I said in my All-Stars review, he was the good old country boy, and they kept, and that's the way he was in Africa. And there's no other way to describe Big Tom other than what you see is what you get. And I think that is what modern Survivor is really missing there, because everybody's so concerned about putting on a character. Why not just, what you see is what you get. You either like it or hate it or whatnot. And then finally we have Ethan, the soccer player from Lexington, the guy with the afro, the guy that Big Tom got excited for at the Survivor auction because he won't eat the ham. And if you've ever seen the season, you know why that moment is very funny. Now let's get into talking about the gameplay, and as always, we start with the pre-merge, and I'm going to be honest, not much really happened here. On the side of the Boron Tribe, Diane got dehydrated and was voted out. Jessie got sick and was voted out. Like I just said a couple minutes ago, there wasn't too much strategy other than the formation of the alliance between Lex, Ethan, and Big Tom. Now, the Samburu Tribe is really where the pre-merge focused on, and they only focused on him because there was the split between old people versus young people. Ooh, how compelling. And then when the swap happened, Frank and T-Bird were the only old people left on the Samburu Tribe. And had the swap not happened, they wouldn't have made the merge, period. If the old people had been victorious in voting out Lindsay instead of Carl when they go to that first tribal council, it would have just been the same thing, guaranteed. The shoe would just be on the other foot. Vote out all the young people, keep all the old people. Very similar to what happened in Survivor Vanuatu. And then, Silas and Lindsay, like I said, they did get screwed by the swap here. And, you have to remember back to this time, the tiebreaker was not a fire-making challenge yet. This was the last season to ever use the prior votes cast method as the tiebreaker. Basically, if there was a tie and it couldn't be resolved, it would be, okay, person A, how many votes did you have cast against you before this? I had 3. Person B, how many votes did you have cast before this? 4. Person B, you're gone. And that's how it worked back then. That's how each of them got, screwed out of the game. And if you were ever going to do a second chances too, the perfect person to bring back would probably be someone like Silas, whose claim to fame was, hey, I was the very first person to ever get screwed by the swap. Now let's move on to the post-merge, and this is the part of Africa that the vast majority of people who have seen the season remember. For starters, you had Lex's infamous snake hunt, when someone voted for him at that first tribal council post-merge. He thought it was Kelly, so Kelly got gone. Then you had Brandon and Frank, who had the Night Under the Stars movie, and they were watching Out of Africa in Africa. You know, Out of Africa is not really that great of a movie, but that's neither here nor there. You had the other moment where it was, Lex and Ethan going to the African village. You had Lex and Big Tom in the hot air balloon, probably the most famous moment out of Survivor Africa. You also had the Survivor auction where Big Tom was jumping up and down for joy. Ethan won't eat the ham because he's a Jew. And if you notice, there's only one gameplay moment here that's really memorable, and that was just Lex's snake hunt. But other than that, that was the biggest gameplay move in the post-merge. Now let's talk about the final two and the winner. Now, obviously, most of you watching or listening to this already know that Ethan's on One Africa. It's quite known. And honestly, he was the first person where everybody just sat back and went, you know what? I'm glad that guy won. It wasn't like, Richard Hatch, where, the popular vote was for Rudy to win, and then second place was Kelly. And then in Australian Outback, you had a bunch of people that wanted Colby Donaldson to win at the time. This was really the first time where the public really got behind the winner. And then the runner-up, Kim Johnson, really was inconsequential until the very end of the game. When you're talking like Final Four, and that's only because she won immunity and she forced, Lex, Big Tom, and Ethan to all turn on each other because, you have to pick one of the three to now sit up there on the jury. This alliance now has to get broken. But honestly, I think even she was smart enough to know that she wasn't going to win the game. Now, this is something that I'm going to argue for Survivor Africa. This season wasn't built on its gameplay at all. It was built on its moments. I brought them up. Lex and Ethan visiting the African village. Lex and Big Tom in the hot air balloon. The Survivor auction. And, Lex visiting the AIDS hospital. I forgot about that. And, if you watch Survivor Africa, you're going to notice that the gameplay for this season is a very, very slow burn. Not a whole lot really happens, and that's fine. Going into the post-merge, it was obvious that an old Boron member was going to win over an old Samburu member because of how the pre-merge essentially went down. You had the old versus young with Samburu that basically balkanized them, and they went, fucking tits up. So it shouldn't have been a shock to anybody watching the season at the time going up to the merge. And this season, like I said, is still considered a top 5 season. But why is it considered a top 5 season? Like I said, in my opinion, it was all of the little moments that happened during Survivor Africa and not really the gameplay. And if we're going to compare this season to modern Survivor, then this season is Survivor at its most basic form. The game that we know as Survivor today began here, even though it was simple. And honestly, I think it's also considered a top 5 season just because of how gnarly that this season was. Not only are you dealing with like the 100+ degree African heat, they were legitimately drinking elephant shit. And keep in mind, that was not by choice. Lex was the poster child for years of someone whose health got destroyed after playing Survivor. He's admitted in multiple interviews over the years that his life was a living hell for like 2 years after he did Survivor Africa.